Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Under the Gum Trees hosted Nonfiction National Simulcast. We are live broadcasting from four locations. I'm Jana Marlise Marin. I am the editor and publisher of Under the Gum Tree, and I am joined by Sarah Wells from River Teeth in Akron, Ohio. Give a wave, Sarah.
Hello.
I am joined by Donna, the editor and publisher of Hippocampus Magazine in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And your live audience. And I'm also joined by Hattie Fletcher from Creative Nonfiction in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Hi. Woohoo. Hi, everyone.
This is a very exciting evening for us because Under the Gum Tree is celebrating its 5-year anniversary. But more than that, this is the first ever national nonfiction simulcast. And as you can see, this is a big, big undertaking. And I just want to give a huge shout out to Creative Nonfiction and Hippocampus and River Teeth for jumping on board with this really harebrained idea of mine. And we're here. We are doing it. We are broadcasting this live. So if you are joining us remotely, hello and thank you. You're virtual and we can't see you, but you can see us and you can hear us. You can participate in the conversation online if you are on Twitter using the hashtag #TrueStoriesLive. We'll be following that conversation throughout the evening and giving some shout outs to folks joining us remotely. We want to know where you are. We want to know where you are tuning in from. So use that hashtag #TrueStoriesLive. Under the Gum Tree is also doing a photo contest with that hashtag. If you are on Instagram, post your photos of tonight's event wherever you are watching or tuning in, or if you're in one of our live audiences, post your Instagram photos, use the hashtag #TrueStoriesLive, and we'll be giving a magazine away to somebody who posts a really awesome picture. Totally subjective. We're just going to pick our favorite picture. So I'm just going to throw that out there. All right, so let's get started. We are going to take turns rotating between locations. So if you're in the live audience, you'll have a live reader at some point throughout the evening. Otherwise, the other readers will be on the projected screen for you to watch wherever you are. So our first reader for the evening is joining us from Ohio. She's the author of a novella-length essay, The Valley of Anger, available on Kindle, and a collection of poems titled Pruning Bushes. And she also has a chapbook of poems. Her poems and essays have appeared recently in Ascent, Brevity, Full Grown People, Hippocampus Review, The Pinch, River Teeth, and elsewhere. Her work has been honored with 3 Pushcart Prize nominations, and her essays have been listed as notable in the Best American Essays 2012 through 2015. She serves as the senior managing editor for the Weatherhead School of Management at Case Western Reserve University, and she's also an associate editor with River Teeth. She is going to be reading for us twice this evening. First time reading her own work, and then we'll close out the evening when she reads some flash nonfiction from River Teeth's column, Beautiful Things, which she co-edits with Michelle Webster-Hine. Please welcome Sarah Wells.
Hey, thank you so much. It's really funny. I've got a great live audience in the background. Lots of books that are just sitting on my bookshelf. So grateful to be a part of this and to represent River Teeth and Joe Mackel and Dan Lehman with River Teeth, as well as Michelle Webster-Hine. I'm going to read a quick flash nonfiction piece, which was published in Brevity a few years ago, and then excerpts from another piece that was published in The Pinch just 2 years ago. This essay is called Field Guide to Resisting Temptation. Do not send song lyrics to Facebook or post YouTube music videos or listen to any songs about love gone wrong or one-night stands or anything on country music radio. Okay, no music at all. Tell him no more. You are done. You are disappearing, removing him from your phone and from your Facebook and from your email. And when you've said all that, mean it. Don't re-add or spy or stalk. Don't search for him on Facebook again to see if he's posted any more YouTube music videos that you listen to and Google the lyrics of, and then know he's still thinking about you late at night so that your finger itches the mouse and you almost click message, almost click poke, almost click add friend. Whatever you do, don't send him a meaningless text or ask what he's doing or how things are going. When you think of something funny, text it to your husband. When something makes you angry or upset, text it to your husband. When you think of texting anything at all to anyone else, text it to your husband. When you want someone to tell you something beautiful and romantic and sexy and you can't get your husband to say it, text your best friend who knows what it's like to want to offer your heart divided, just so part of it can be filled at least part way, and wait for it to pass. It'll pass. Just be still and wait. Don't call him. Don't text him. It'll pass. And remember your kids, the ones that keep talking and talking, mom, mom, mama, mommy, mom, but your thoughts keep slipping elsewhere. Remember them, strap them against your chest, wield them in your hands, stand them in front of your eyes, and eventually you won't see through them anymore. Your 3 children won't understand your need for attention. Anything you do or say will shout that their dad wasn't enough. The same man you spent 8 years creating babies with, for some reason, isn't enough now, which isn't true. It isn't the full story. It's only a moment. This moment when you are small and insecure and not even looking for something more. They will wonder whether it was their fault. Later, they will know it wasn't. It was you, all you, and him, and him. Of course, you will fail if you keep telling yourself he's just a friend. It's fun and easy. There aren't any consequences. You aren't actually doing something, just flirting. It's harmless. It makes you feel good. He's a city, a state, a country, an ocean, a universe away, so why does it matter? What does it matter? Except you wonder if it shows in your eyes when you tell your husband, I love you. What does it matter, except you are afraid you might say something in your sleep, even though nothing has happened. Nothing is happening. Nothing will happen. Stop lying to yourself. Turn off the computer. Put down your phone. Stop checking Facebook. Listen to your husband play the guitar and sing songs you adore. Eat your baked sweet potato fries and guacamole with a glass of American honey over a game of rummy, and realize later you are here, wholly, mercifully. Keep looking into your husband's eyes and search until yours answer. And then this essay is called Human Resources Training. I'm not reading all of it, just a few excerpts from it. Given the national conversation lately, I felt like it would be good to present a couple of sides of the woman's perspective on all of these things that are happening in our world. So, human resources training. Next, we're going to talk about preventing and addressing sexual harassment and what you need to watch for in the workplace. I'm sure you'll have questions, and we can explore those as we go along. The light in the room had gradually changed as sunlight angled between the blinds, forcing us all to squint. Let's begin with a quick definition, the HR director proceeded. What is considered sexual harassment? Here are 4 questions to ask yourself. A yes to any of these qualifies. 1. Was the conduct sexual in nature? Did he make advances? Was there touching? Did he utter sexual innuendos? Did he call you eye candy in an email? Did he pucker up and lean in for a kiss? Did he touch your thigh? Did he rub your back right before you launched yourself out the door? I have to get out of this car, you said. I'll see you later. Did he say, do you get chills like I do every time you see my name in the subject line of your inbox? 2. Was the conduct unwelcome? Well, was it? You liked it, didn't you, at first? Titillated to be desired by this friend, this someone other than your husband. You felt clever and witty in your replies, then surprised that he was looking into your eyes that way. But the hand on your thigh, no, that was never welcome. Stop touching me. You have to stop touching me. But you said it with a smile, with a grin. No, a surprised grin, but you said it anyway. You did. You said no. You did. You did. You did. You said, I have a husband. You said, I'm happily married. You said, I love my husband. But you were there, still, passive, neutral, until you unfriended him on Facebook, until you wrote those no more messages, those enough messages, until finally you sent the email with all the ways you had said no already, how you said it weakly and firmly and are saying it again, no. But still you waited. You wondered if he was thinking about you. 3. Was the conduct severe or pervasive? Just one incidence of quid pro quo is severe enough to constitute harassment, but a single lewd joke is neither severe enough nor pervasive enough to constitute harassment. No, eye candy once in an email isn't pervasive. The bar, you invited him out for a drink. The hand on your thigh crossed a line, and then he did it again. And then he did it again, and each time you picked his hand up and moved it away. But then it was you who stepped into his car the night before he left, you wanting just a few more minutes in the presence of a person who openly longed for you. You look so beautiful. Have you kissed anyone besides your husband since you were married? You haven't, really. Wow, I bet it'd be great. Persistent, yes. Yes, too, the text messages, I keep thinking of you in that dress. But no, you didn't have to see his Facebook page, the song lyrics. You didn't have to read into the YouTube videos he posted. They could have been about any girl, anywhere, not you, probably not you, maybe not you, you. 4. Would a reasonable person find the conduct hostile, intimidating, or offensive? What does a reasonable person look like? Years ago, you questioned your best friend's tearful confession to being violated. You said, are you sure? When what you were thinking was, are you sure you didn't want it? Are you sure you don't just regret what happened? You weren't sure, but you regretted many things you did with boys, regretted letting Kevin's hand grope your chest and reach for your pants in the movie theater in 8th grade, regretted letting Chris keep going until you whispered no. So afraid to disappoint him, always afraid to let the boys down, to let everybody down. You didn't say yes, but you didn't say no either. Frozen, hovering over your body the way fog rises off the melting snow. Your body didn't melt back then. It didn't move. It waited for hands to quit roaming, waited until it couldn't keep quiet anymore, and then your mouth said no. Your mouth said, we should go. You are ashamed, guilty, burn with it, spin in it. I'm so sorry I didn't believe you, you tell your friend all these years later. It is the elephant in the room that destroyed your friendship, the elephant that followed you into the night and haunted your dreams, all the ways you tried to rescue her in your sleep until the unforgivable doubt was forgiven. I forgive you, she said. Who is a reasonable person? How do you find one? And how much do you tell? How much do you reveal? Risking, are you sure? Risking, no, that's absurd. You were asking for it. Here are some examples of sexual harassment. Written, including electronic communications and email, love notes or letters, suggestive comments or memos, graffiti. I'm really looking forward to seeing you. Is that okay? Is that okay? Is it suggestive, provocative, sincere, as a friend, as something more? So sly, so simple, so many ways you can read this winking emoticon. And what if it is all just games, as he says, and it is you who is taking the advances as something more than an elbow in the side, something more? How dare you believe that it could be something more anyway? How audacious of you to think some other man might want you. How dare you even think he'd do something if you let him? That's what you've been thinking, isn't it? He'd do something if you let him. He said so. He only stopped because you told him to. We're nearing the end of our human resources training. If someone complains to you about harassment, be careful of these statements. It's just teasing, no big deal. It's your fault for dressing that way. Just ignore it. He puts his hands around everyone. Why can't you learn to accept a compliment? It's a joke, lighten up. Oh, boys will be boys. This kind of behavior is part of growing up. He doesn't mean anything by it. Would you tell your friend these things today if she approached you? If she said the things she said back then, would you turn the blame back on her the way you have done to yourself these last 12 months? 12 months. Hell, these 18 years since that boy plunged his tongue into your mouth, slipped his hand up your blouse, reached towards your blue jean button. Would you tell her wearing that kind of a dress, that kind of a shirt, dressing that way is a stumbling block for men, and it's her responsibility to conceal herself, her responsibility to relieve the burden of men and their lustful thoughts by covering herself, retreating inward, that the only thing attractive about her is her body, and as long as she keeps that hidden, she's protected from the men who latch on to images of lean waists and long legs. That it's her body they want, not her mind, not her spirit, not her goodness. No, those things she can wear on her sleeve because that's not what draws a man in. No. But I was pregnant at that conference, you said, shocked he could have had a crush on you even then, bulging and swollen and full of new life that you created with another man, your husband. Impossible, you thought, your body distorted and untrustworthy, unstable, unaware even as this grown woman you might have more to offer, more a man might hunger after. No, you wouldn't say those things to her, would never dream of speaking these lies out loud, so why, dear one, why do you keep repeating them to yourself? Your friend says, I'm so sorry this has happened to you. She says, you do not have to be nice. You can be mean if you need to. Take her example. Thank the expansive universe of grace and mercy for this friend who speaks the truth in love. You wonder if similar words had been spoken to you in your youth, if someone had said, your body is your own, would you have known there was an option other than freezing? Would you have known you could fight or flee? You could push his hand away, slap his face, say no, and leave right then. If you had only known there was something to protect, something more than, be careful, I know the way those boys think. If you had known these things, if you hadn't assumed the world was as safe as the one that your parents had built for you, what would you have gained? How much could you have saved? Instead of nothing, something had been said, something had been spoken, some boundaries drawn, some guidelines written, some affirmation given. You are worthy of love and affection, and this is what it should look like. This is how a man should treat you. And if he doesn't treat you right, fight, flee. He is not worthy. These are the things that you should do and say long before you drop your daughter and her innocence off at the movie theater with a boy, before you pick her up later and she is silent. How was the movie, you will ask, and she will say, good, because it's the only thing she knows to say. It was good, wasn't it? Thanks. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, Sarah. I hope you can hear the applause for you. That was wonderful. Quick shout out to Barry Maxwell, who is joining us from Austin, Texas. He was giving us the shout out on Twitter. And also Kelly Figgs Smith, who says, hi from Mount Vernon, Ohio. Love this field guide essay by Sarah Wells, one of my all-time favorites. Thank you both for tuning in. That's so awesome to hear from our virtual audience. So keep up the conversation. I'll do some shout outs periodically throughout the night. Our next reader is one of our Under the Gumtree readers here in Sacramento. And as soon as he's done reading, I'll be turning the mic over to Donna in Lancaster and Hippocampus, where she'll introduce our reader following that. So our next reader has published 3 books of stories and essays. Live from Fresno, Elos won an American Book Award. The Mexican Man in His Backyard is his most recent. He has published widely in magazines and anthologies, including Nonfiction in 4th Genre, River Teeth, Under the Sun, Alaska Quarterly Review, Third Coast, Ziziva, and Cleaver Magazine. He's working on a collection of essays and a hybrid nonfiction novel. He teaches at California State University East Bay. Please welcome Steve Gutierrez.
Thank you. Thank you, Jana, and thank you everybody here at Shine in Sacramento. I will read from my essay in the current edition of Under the Gumtree, excerpts from it, not the whole thing. Spiritual direction. Do you think prayer has any lasting impact, sister? Does it help? I sit with my spiritual director in an office at the Mercy Center in Burlingame, California. It is a huge castle run by the Sisters of Mercy, gorgeously landscaped with an impressive garden and a labyrinth to walk away your cares. Spiritual direction is advisement for those eager to discern a pattern in their life, God's plan. I am another lost pilgrim who was frightened and spiritually bereft. desperate to connect with a larger purpose manifest in the small sphere of my tainted existence. Step back and call it God if you wish. I don't care. Names don't excite me. Neither does complete disbelief. I am full of disbelief. I drop to my knees and pray crazily in the middle of the day. Oh God, oh God, oh God, triumph over me. Momentarily absolved of doubt by my own efforts, participating in the insane loop of proving God's presence by my demand for it, I get up off my knees and continue my sinful ways blithely. I hobble around on earth brokenly, looking for God who doesn't give me any hints as to her whereabouts, unless it's in the small gestures of token kindness that might signify all we are capable of. We bent humans and cry. I decided to take a break from therapy because I am talked out about myself, psychologically speaking. And in fact, my therapist has been good, useful, helpful in getting me up on my feet after a bad spell of the blues. I opt for the spiritual route instead, as I am still in need of balance. I get a lead on a spiritual director from a friend of my wife and follow it. I think prayer is the one thing that keeps us alive, she says. The spiritual director of mine, Sister Carmen Rodriguez from down my way originally. She's from Southern California, near LA. Without it, we would have been blown up, she adds. Funny, I've been thinking the same thing. Really, she asks. Yes, I say. Just above her head on the green wall, an office green with a soothing yellow undertone, a nuclear bomb explodes. The telltale gray mushroom forms and dissolves in an instant. I am not on drugs. I don't take heavy meds. It's a common image in my head nowadays. I fear the world community has forgotten the horror of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and are ready to accept nuclear weaponry as feasible. I think without prayer, we would have been dead a long time ago. Well, how about that, she says. She's a hero. I consider her and all the varied religious who have prayed for peace over the past 6 decades the saviors of the world. The ones who have generated the energy to prevent horrible accidents and miscalculations in the war rooms of the Soviet Union and the United States and China. I'm nuts about energy. It's a single proof of religion I have. That flow you enter almost casually when you let go and trust, have faith, believe, surrender to fate, and indisputably know it is at work for you. That flow with its many odd occurrences and synchronicities baffling the odds makers, disproving the proponents of randomness. Are you afraid of death? I ask her. No, I'm not, Steve, she says. Death is so simple, so natural. I've seen so much of it. It's nothing to be afraid of. It's life you got to watch out for. Her eyes twinkle. Timeless, she sits before me, gray-haired, serene, kindly. She's pushing 80, but almost 30. Well, that is an exaggeration. But it would not be a crime to state under oath that the beauty of age rests upon her and that her smile is true and great. Especially on the topic of religion, she lights up. She speaks of Enneagrams and Jung and Kierkegaard and Saint Teresa of Avila and major theologians with confidence and delight. She loves them all, the thinkers, the mystics, the poets. She is a Mexicana of a previous generation, proud to be an American, but never ever renouncing her Mexican spirit, which she claims drives her more than any other force, any other influence. She gained this strength from her parents in the fields of Ventura County. It wasn't easy back then, picking and taking much from the owners and people who didn't like Mexicans, the bad ones. There were also good ones, she is quick to point out. She is a model Mexican American, the best of our dwindling tribe. Everybody is Latino now. It is different. She goes back to Mexico for her Catholic strength too. Standing at the edge of her low bookcase, the Virgin Mary looks sad and pleased in bronze, the small statue of Guadalupe resting on a bright piece of Mexican blanket. You shouldn't be afraid either, Steve, she says. No, not of death, but of life, yes. She has seen bad times. Early on in her life as a nun, she suffered greatly working with the poor in the fields of the San Joaquin Valley, the story fields of the grapes of wrath and Cesar Chavez. They didn't want to change. They didn't want to help themselves. She fell into the worst kind of depression. She didn't know what to do. Seen so much injustice and deprivation, she felt helpless in her quest to bring them dignity and hope. Pero no querían la esperanza. They didn't want the hope. They stayed stuck in suspicion and fear of anything new. She worked tirelessly for the poor, los pobres, the truly impoverished in our state, and got mowed down by an ingrained passivity that also infuriated her. She resigned and curled up in bed for a long, long time, saved by the mercy and patience of her own order of nuns, the Sisters of Mercy. It was bad, Stephen, she emphasizes, bad. Los pobres didn't need her or anybody else outside la familia, el patrón, Dios. The family, the boss, and God would take care of them. Yet, they could use so much that was available to them, but rejected it. A deep fatalism ran in them and kept them down. She couldn't stand them for a while. Just thinking of them made her sick. She got mad at herself and at God and at the world. She wanted to exit this rotten place. She didn't see a reason for sticking around now that her vocation had proven false. I almost did say goodbye. I had the means. I knew the pills to take. But I just closed my eyes and prayed one more time. Hail Mary, full of grace. Then one morning I woke up and it was morning. It wasn't different, but it was the same like it was before I got sick. Tú sabes que estoy diciendo. You know what I'm talking about. I just decided to get up and live. And I did. And here I am, 100 years later, your spiritual director, joven. Imagine that. Sister Carmen is my friend. She tells me what I need to hear. So I had my little dance with Satan, eh? Then I remembered where I came from. Ventura! Shoot, Stephen. Those people out there in the fields outside Bakersfield, every morning they got up and fought. I needed to realize that. Their heroism. And I finally did on my deathbed. I see. She mimics a corpse, arms crossed over her chest, staring away vacantly. I got up with them, for them. I got up, damn it. That's all I did. Get up, Stephen. Get up. Thank you.
Hang on, Donna, real quick. You're on mute. And we can't unmute you. Thanks for bearing it in there with us with live streaming.
Okay.
Awesome. Donna, go.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you, and we're very pleased to be here, and I'm pleased to introduce our next reader. Laura Jean Kennedy is a professor at Lock Haven University and also teaches in the Graduate Creative Writing Program at Wilkes University. And she's the author of the memoir Crave, Sojourn of a Hungry Soul. Among other honors, Crave was named one of the best nonfiction books by Black authors in 2015 by The Root, and was a finalist in Forward Review's Indie Fab Book of the Year in 2015 for Memoir. She has published an array of articles and essays on poverty in America, community, and domestic violence and women's issues. Kennedy also spoke at our 2016 Creative Nonfiction Conference at Hippocampus, and we're so pleased to have her here tonight. Thank you, Laura.
I am so pleased to be here. Thank you, Donna, for inviting me. Thank you for Gumtree, Liberty, Creative Nonfiction, and Hippocampus. This is just such an amazing event, and I'm happy to be a part of it. I'm going to be reading from my memoir, Crave. Just one section of the memoir, chapter. And things you need to know is from 15 to 16, I was in an abusive relationship. And so this book, this actual section picks up when that relationship ends. And I mentioned a place, Cavalier Minor. You want to know that rich people come from there, rich people in our area. Life rang on. After Sanford, I found myself in books, spending hours dissecting Stephen King's masterpieces, examining the ways in which his dysfunction loomed less functional than my own. Machines that targeted people, planes that landed in dead worlds, and aliens unearthed in tiny towns provided evidence. My kind of crazy wasn't the worst crazy in the world. During that period, there should have been time for healing, an understanding of Lori without the pressure of being Sanford's girl, but that healing never came. There was just the knowing that without a man, I was untethered, like a seatbelt, flopping outside a car door. Flying in the wind, I looked free, but I was in fact trapped, unable to control my flickering. I so fragile, so flimsy, proved easily caught by another man, Greg. Having grown up in Cavalier Minor, Greg was what we considered an outsider. Somebody who didn't live in the park, didn't slang in the park, wasn't dating in the park, and still he cruised Deep Creek Boulevard daily. He and his best friend, Ricky, would park their Honda Preludes, Ricky's Burgundy and Greg's Gray, at the corner store and turn their radios to the same song at the highest decibel possible. They'd sit in their cars, bopping their heads, sipping a little something, watching us in Lincoln Park like we were in concert, performing just for them. Once they had their fill, they'd disappear into their cars, speeding off to homes where quiet reigned once the shipyard sounded the 9 o'clock bomb. For us in Lincoln, the night had just begun. I encountered Greg one day walking to the store to get my favorite cheese on meat crackers and orange soda, and since I was walking to be seen, I shook a little harder, stretched my legs longer when I saw him looking my way. "Hey, youngin'," he called as I crossed the street. "What's your name?" "I'm Lori," I said shyly, barely looking into his still eyes. He was a manila-colored man with red hair speckled with blonde or gray strands throughout. With his hair thinning at the top, I eyed a shine glistening across his scalp. He had a goatee with those same blonde or gray strands, and he wasn't GQ like New Edition's Ralph Tresvant, but he looked good enough with plaid shirts, stonewashed jeans, and rugged boots for me to answer. If I had been wearing heels, I'm certain I would have been taller than him, and he was chunkier than my normal type, but my standards had lowered exponentially after Sanford, so I didn't mind. As he shrugged his shoulders, rubbed his hands together, and cooed, "Oh, you a youngin'. You gonna be my sweet young thing." I smiled, not because of the bass in his car, the way his rims shined, or the fact that he looked at me as if he already owned me, but because he was right. It wouldn't be hard for me to be his sweet young thing. I wanted to be gotten. "You need a ride?" he asked. I tried not to laugh since he'd seen me walk from my house across the street to the store. He laughed himself as he said, "Oh, you live right there." I knew not to talk to Greg too long. Mama might run out of the house and embarrass me if she saw me talk to somebody at least 10 years older than me. So I acted quickly. "Maybe later, you got a number?" I asked. He thrust his hands into his pocket and produced a pen and paper, prepared for what he might find in Lincoln Park. "What's your number?" he asked. Our phone had been disconnected, and I was too embarrassed to say I didn't have a phone, so I told him my mama didn't allow guys to call my house. He nodded as if he dealt with mothers like that before. "You a pretty young thing, a real red bone. You gonna be mine," he repeated as he handed me his number. Our first night out, I settled into Greg's passenger seat, allowing its velvety skin to massage my spine. The smell of his cologne pressed against the dash, the electric window, and the sunroof. The dashboard was lit in reds, greens, and whites that reflected off of his eyes and made them sparkle as he looked at me. "Look at my pretty red youngin'," he slurred. I could hear the saliva collecting in his mouth. "We're gonna have a real good time." And we did. He took me to the movies, and not the Tower Mall, where most teenagers, of course, would went. He took me to Greenbrier Mall, all the way in Chesapeake, where the rich people who had cars and money went, so they wouldn't have to sit next to people like us. We saw the movie Juice with Omar Epps and Tupac Shakur. He held my hand even after I dug toward the bottom of the popcorn, even after it was wrapped around a cold cup of soda, which I thoroughly appreciated. Afterward, We went through the McDonald's drive-thru where I ordered a quarter-pounder meal without worrying about how much it cost and who paid for it. After we pulled into Greg's apartment complex, he threw our McDonald's trash in the dumpster, parked next to his car. Oh, shit. My keys, he whispered, as he fingered his pockets, patted his butt and his hips. Greg said he'd thrown the keys in the dumpster, that he'd heard them clang against the steel bottom. Can you climb in and get them for me? He asked. I did not want to climb in that dumpster. Even I knew only trash belonged there, but I was already his sweet young thing, and he had bought me a quarter pounder. At the least I owed him that. So I placed my foot in the cradle of his hands and allowed him to hoist me over the steel rim. Grime and slime crawled in between my fingers as I gripped the edge. The gum stench clung to my palm's lifeline. The smell of crabs left on a burning sidewalk wafted around me in a mini tornado, fueled by my breathing. I smelled flies, even though I couldn't hear them or feel the wind of their wings beating against my skin. The stench of feces, aged like crumbled blue cheese, smacked pungent against my pinched nostrils. With my leg hurled over the lip, I felt a thick layer of sludge soaking through my jeans, the ones I slid on hours before, wondering if Greg would attempt to slide them off later that night. I let go, flung myself into the darkness, plunked onto the steel floor. Thankfully, he couldn't see my face. Are you okay? His voice traveled from outside the tank. I did not reply, afraid something lurking would lodge itself in my open mouth. I searched within the dumpster, surprised at how vacant it was. Must have been empty today, I thought, thankful for gifts I wasn't sure I deserved. I wouldn't allow myself to wonder why I was there. Couldn't think, this shouldn't be. Thinking and dumpster didn't go together. Nothing went together in that moment, so I searched the crevices devoid of light. I wished the glow from the light pole could shine through the darkness, that it could help me find what I was searching for. Through the steel cave in which I descended, I heard a noise. Not a scurrying rat, as I'd expected, or the squish of gunk sucking at the heel of my shoe. The noise was outside, jingling, a subtle clamoring in the form of metal against metal. Man, shit, he swore from the other side of the steel wall. You're gonna be mad, he said with a giggle. I was already dirty swimming in grime, so I didn't think twice when I gripped the edge, peeked over to the other side, waiting to see what would offend me more than where I was and what I was doing. There he stood, keys in hand, swaying, attempting to hide the smile on his face. I'm so sorry. They were in my pocket. He spoke those words, but his smile said something else. You're a good girl to do that, though. Don't know anybody who would have gotten into a dumpster for me. Until I had done it myself, I hadn't known anyone who would have gotten into a dumpster either. Yet I had. I had gone grimier than I'd ever imagined. I couldn't even remember who the clean me was. So this new person, this me to whom I had been introduced, clung to the side of the dumpster as Greg pulled her out, held his hands with her pinky because she didn't want her dirt on his clean, walked alongside him to his home, washed her hands, the back of her thighs, her face, any exposed part of herself, and yet she could not be cleaned. As I watched her hours later, under Greg, feigning passion, I counted his breaths, the amount of times his body rose and fell over her. I knew what she did not, what she could not reveal to herself. It was a test. She had done everything required, followed all instructions perfectly, which meant she had failed. I watched her, waited to see if she would spot me, listened as his lips pressed against her shoulder, mumbled, "You're my young red thing, ain't you?" She nodded, moved her face away from his, and then our gazes locked. Off in the darkness, connected with what she had once been. Eyes wide open, lips pulled tightly to her mouth, hide and teeth clamped together, she glared at me, the part of herself that had walked away. with her nose pulled as closely to her forehead as possible. I could tell she smelled me, that I still carried the stench of the dumpster, that my scent and my knowing was as offensive as the grime and the sludge we had trudged through. Thank you.
Hattie, you need to unmute.
Hello. Did
There
that
we go.
work?
Thank you.
Excellent. Hello, everybody. We are so happy to be here. Our first reader at Creative Nonfiction is Jeff Oakes. Jeff Oakes, in Pittsburgh at least, hardly needs an introduction. But his most recent chapbook, Mistakes with Strangers, was published by Seven Kitchens Press. He's a recipient of 3 Pennsylvania Council of the Arts fellowships, and he's published poems in a number of literary magazines, most recently Barrow Street, Field, Nimrod, and Tupelo Quarterly. But his essays have appeared at length, Kenyon Review Online, and recently in Creative Nonfiction. And in the anthologies My Diva, 65 Gay Men on the Women Who Inspire Them, and Brief Encounters, a collection of contemporary nonfiction. And he teaches writing at the University of Pittsburgh. So give it up for Jeff Oakes.
Thank you, real world and virtual world. Hi out there. I'm reading from an essay from the marriage issue. It's called Alphabet for the First Year. On the ceremony. My apologies to anyone whose marriage fell apart because I married another man. We tried to do it quietly with just close friends and family so we wouldn't make a spectacle. We both wore suits that signaled we were completely practical and calm. No one was the bride. We're both husbands. We husband each other. We did hold hands. We did leak tears, half nerves and half unexpected wellings up of happiness for our serious purpose, both of our irony shields collapsing there in front of the judge's enormous bench. My husband's 4-year-old niece held my hand for a little bit. We met online in March. We were more or less living together by June, and we married that October. A whirlwind for sure. A mistake, my mother would have said, who never understood the way I make decisions. I'd made a life and living, after all, out of poetry and words. I bought a house I loved in a sketchy part of the city that soon became the next place to be. A house that has doubled in value in a decade despite a recession. I have a retirement account with more money in it than she ever had. I have done everything in my life differently than she did. Still, I wonder if I would have gotten married if she hadn't died. On the doubts around us. Some people worry about the slippery slope we represent. If marriage doesn't mean one and only one thing, what's to keep any 2 things in the world from being wedded together? Man and goat, woman and cat, man and chicken. Others worry that same-sex marriages will break Social Security. Some friends of ours worry that those of us who get married will slip away into the suburbs and start worrying only about our lawns. I can't say I haven't seen that happen. Will we still be gay? A friend of mine asked. What happened to the liberation? On hedgehogs. Hedgehogs have become a symbol over the course of the year. M wants one, but I don't allow it. That's how it's always phrased, as something I don't allow. The truth is, Pennsylvania doesn't allow people to own hedgehogs, to prevent the abandonment of them into the wild, where they might interfere with native species. Abandonment is a given the fickleness of most people. Escape is possible too. It's not actually that I wouldn't like to have a hedgehog, but that I'd be the one spending time with it, worrying about it, crushed by its tiny eventual death. I need large pets with agency, who can decide some issues on their own and in favor of a settled, stable home. A hedgehog wants to burrow, to escape. Even the state knows this. Still, my husband continues to desire one. Does he want to escape? Is he afraid I want to escape? So he feels the need to own me? Is this even about a hedgehog anymore? M has also expressed interest in a pygmy goat, a pot-bellied pig, a corgi, and/or a parrot, not one of which I've agreed to. Those have not become symbols, though. I think it's because I secretly want a hedgehog too, want to feel the warm spininess of it, hold the uncanny breathing of it, feel the tickle of its earth-moving claws, give it a name like a child who will never grow up between us, make it giggle with delight, despite its armor. On mathematics. M loves math, is in school for mathematics, actuarial math, mathematical biology. Beyond the plus, the minus, the multiplication of, the division of, which I know, he is deeply into the sine, the cosine, the function, the field, the vectors, all things super and subscripted. I see roofs in square roots, embraces in parentheses. He uses pencils whose points are precise and brittle. I can't think of the last time I used an eraser. He's blonde and I'm dark brown. I can recite the formulas for iambic meters in my sleep, but I don't balance my checking account, which was the primary use of math when I grew up. He maps curves and points and parabolas and line segments. His father can estimate a barn out of pieces of lumber. His sister divides her time among 2 children, an engineer husband, 3 dogs, 2 cats. We have 24 hours a day, 16 if you don't count sleep. We need a new bed because a good night's sleep is an incalculable good. There's a sale at Sears, 60% off the regular price. He's 25 this year. I'm 51. It bugs me still, that distance. It makes me nervous. I tried to calculate the reasons out to the billionth place early on, but he kept saying, stop it. It doesn't matter. There are people in his family who haven't lived long. He might not make it to 50. I might live 30 more years. And anyway, we're always driving around, and 3,287 people die every day on average from car accidents. As I write this, sitting across from him at our favorite coffee house, he writes to say he loves me. It comes up as a text on my iPad, an object so complicated I could never imagine the reality of it if it were not here in front of me. I write back that I love him, so an equal sign hangs between our own complicated selves. Underneath everything. Underneath everything is everything else. Underneath the desire, this desire is that desire, underneath which is still another desire, all the way down to the first desire, I suppose. Was the first life itch to feed, to split, to run, to fight? What was it the first bodies couldn't do without? Was it pure, a clarity? Sometimes I try to go down into it. Was the first marriage a splitting of a cell into its twin, twinning and twinning for eons until something small broke and had to change? Soon what was perfect rhyme everywhere became slant, off, half, strange. I watch there's a weird word. I watch my husband look at me sometimes and I wonder who he's looking at. What desire has turned him toward me? Sometimes a desire to bask in his desire stretches me out. Sometimes I feel an urge to clean my beard, check my nose, suck my stomach in. Underneath the promises of the wedding vows are the obligations to selflessness, whose trials can be tough to undergo. Underneath the ceremony lie the anniversaries with their various symbols: paper, glass, sunlight, struggle, wealth, patience. The dog understands that there are now two people who will feed him, on whom he can rely for comfort and exercise. But he also knows he's the lowest beast in the house. He used to be merely lower than me. Or maybe that's just what I think is underneath the reason he still howls like a wolf when M comes home late from work. This is the last section I'll read. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, world out there. On the walk. That first Christmas, we were given a walk, which required us to go on a hunt for walk oil, which led us to fish sauce, 3 kinds of vinegar, 10 kinds of soy sauce, and then walnut oil, sunflower oil, truffle oil, extinct rhinoceros oil, the tears of albino alligators, tiger claw oil, dwarf porpoise oil, left-handed virgin oil, kink-tailed shark oil, and invisible swallow oil. We stood for an hour in the grocery store, just counting the kind of beings we hadn't realized could become oil, could be ground down, rendered, or imagined into ooze we could use to make our chicken taste like anything living or dead or possible. With broccoli, of course. Or snow peas, we love those. Or carrots sliced into lozenges, buttons, cufflinks. Or peppers, some of which now come in bags and so resemble small orange and red voodoo dolls that we dressed to in scraps of our clothes and wrap them together tightly, burying them in a beautiful dark blue container in the backyard where they've begun to sprout, hallelujah, magic realist fruit, out of which an oil can be made that, when applied by lovers to lovers, makes all other light and heat unnecessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Patty, I love your bunny ears. Happy Halloween, everyone. Thank you all for spending your Saturday of Halloween weekend with us. I don't know about you all, but I would much rather be hearing true stories than, dressing up and partying or whatever. So from Twitter, we have Joe Davini, who says, tuning in from Rockland, California for True Stories Live, celebrating 5 years of telling true stories without shame. We also have Megan Lasov Gregg, listening to spiritual direction while sitting next to my husband, a spiritual director in Frederick, Maryland. We also have Stephanie A.B. Norland, who says, this National Nonfiction Simulcast is so cool. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you all for tuning in. And yes, hello, virtual world. We are not forgetting about you. Our next reader is from Under the Gum Tree. She is a fiction writer and poet who has lived in Chicago, Minnesota, New England, and now Sacramento. She received a John Crow Ransom Poetry Prize from Kenyon College and has attended the Breadloaf Writers Conference in Fiction. Her poems were recently included in Convergence and Late Peaches, an anthology of Sacramento poets. Her new collection of short stories, Remedies for Hunger, received 4 stars from the Chicago Book Review and was featured in their Best of Books 2015 list. And she is currently working on a novel set in Chicago 1970. Please welcome Anara Gard.
Thanks to Under the Gum Tree for the invitation. And yeah, it's very strange to be looking at people that are invisible. But thank you. This is a piece called Ripening, and I'll be reading a slightly shorter version than what's in the 5th anniversary edition of Under the Gum Tree. My father is a general, locked in battle with the A&P, and I am his 15-year-old foot soldier armed with coupons. I lean my elbows on the round scarred table while Dad lays out his plan. He licks his thumb before turning each page of newspaper to show me the items he has circled. The pressure of his ballpoint pen has scored the paper, nearly tearing it. There are dark circles under his eyes. Stale coffee breath wafts from his mouth. Now I've made a list. He pushes an envelope toward me, covered in his spindly printing, each item coded with numbers and markings. I peek at the front of the envelope. It's addressed to Illinois Bell. That means he didn't send this month's payment, and the bill is probably lost in one of the stacks of mail heaped on the table. We need margarine. It should cost 32 cents a pound. Sometimes it's on sale for as little as 29 cents, but that's hard to find. Under no circumstances pay more than 34 cents. He taps with his pen on the list, where margarine 29, 32, 34 is scrawled like the name of a girl with strange measurements. I nod to show that I understand the mission of the margarine. Next item, sausage. Oh wait, we gotta go back. The margarine I mean is the house brand. I don't remember the name of it, but it's packaged in a yellow box. Well, all the margarines are in a yellow box. That's how they try to fool you into believing it's like butter, which of course it isn't. Did I ever tell you how when I was a kid they called it oleo? I nod vigorously. I've heard that story many times. And the one about the cat eating the Cheerios. And the one about the steering wheel coming off in the car. And the tales of when he was a sergeant in Korea and told all the men to change their socks. Oh, I did? Well, the margarine that you want is just to the left of the pickles on the bottom shelf, and don't pay more than 34 cents. Okay, Dad. We're only on the first item, and 10 minutes have crawled by. At this rate, it will take longer for me to be assigned my mission than to walk to the grocery store and do the shopping. He licks his thumb and flips a page to show me where he circled the advertised special of bananas before cross-referencing it with the word bananas on the list. Too bad my little brother hates them. If it's on sale cheap, we'll be buying it. We probably qualify for food stamps, but that kind of assistance means paperwork. Worse, it requires tax returns. Dad hasn't managed to get around to filing his taxes for a few years. After he was laid off, something broke within him. He stays up all night and sleeps all day. The living room couch has a permanent sag from the hours he spends lying on it. Even after Mom left us, he didn't return to sleeping in their bed. On the rare afternoons when I bring friends over, we tiptoe past him. He sleeps with his back turned to the room, forming a blank wall. Mom used to prepare elaborate, unappreciated dinners. French onion soup, fondue, Chinese hot pot. It's a relief to have casual meals with Dad, except for the minor inconvenience that he can't cook. But he solved that problem by returning to his hillbilly roots and buying a deep fat fryer that he keeps on the back porch. Everything goes into that fryer. Chicken, sausage, fish fillets, bacon, hot dogs. Each item adds its own layer of grease into the mixture, which congeals into a waxy-looking solid. He's proud of the fact we never need to buy Crisco. He creates his own version. Dad, it smells bad. There's no such thing as rancid when it comes to deep frying. Once it reaches 350 degrees, you've cooked out any bits that might have gone off, he says. But it tastes bitter, just the same. 35 years later, I am 50 and have traveled 2,000 miles to come home for a visit. He is 85, has been remarried for a quarter of a century. His wife is bedfast, and it's a grim race whether cancer or dementia will take her first. I pray for the cancer to win. When he called me, he said, It's a hostis situation. Hostas? Like the garden plants? Hostage? Hostis, he insists. Nurses come in twice a week. Ah, hospice. He has always mispronounced words. Now he hates trying to say the names of medications. Even when pronounced right, they sound wrong. He asks me to go with him to the supermarket and insists on driving, even though he can no longer swivel his head right or left to check for merging traffic. We go to the biggest supermarket in Chicago. It takes 2 hours to navigate the store aisle by aisle. He wants to know, does this stuff go in the icebox? Can I microwave pork chops? What is a croquette? That's a good price on bananas, I say. Is it? He asks. Which ones should I get? That he is asking me for advice is still so new that I check to make sure he's not being sarcastic. Well, if you're not going to eat them right away, get the ones with green tips and they'll be just right in a couple of days. What do you mean? They'll ripen and become yellow, Dad. They will? He's surprised. Well, yeah, those, I gesture at bunches of bright green bananas huddled together, will start to turn yellow and ripen, and then they'll get little speckles on them and finally turn brown and mushy. Green bananas are the same kind as yellow ones? He is astonished, and I am floored that somehow he has lived for 8 decades without learning that bananas ripen and become yellow. I explain, solid green is stage 1, green tip is stage 3 or 4. Stage 6 will always be cheap because they're only good for banana bread. He shakes his head in amazement. Never knew this. I thought the green ones were a different species. Nope, they're all the same. It just takes time for them to ripen. Everything takes time now. It's all so time consuming, he says. And I see how he is being consumed by time. Long furrows eaten into his drooping face. He scowls. I'm not competent at this. He waves his hand to indicate the avocados, the produce bins, the entire store, but I know that he means more than shopping. His bedroom has been taken over by adult diapers and portable oxygen. The kitchen cupboards are crammed with spices he doesn't recognize and implements that defy his efforts to use them. My dad once walked steel beams high above the city. He piloted a laser atop a huge machine that dug tunnels far below the streets. He supervised concrete pours on buildings throughout Chicago, and now he is not competent. 35 years ago, his wife left him with 3 kids in a crumbling house. But even though he had trouble getting off the couch, he still was the smartest man I knew. He held opinions and insights on everything. He understood big, permanent objects. He had survived battles, won lawsuits, argued his way out of tight situations. 50 must have felt like the end of a long, lonely road to him. Maybe he wanted to curl up and die, but he had kids to feed. So he made lists each night, calculating how to stretch the budget and what to buy. Before he woke me to deliver his lectures, before he sent me on my way with a handful of dollar bills, he kept vigil through the dark hours while I slept. You're doing great, Dad, I say, and I add the green bananas to our cart. Thank you.
We're going to hear from Creative Nonfiction next. And Hattie, I believe you're going to have to unmute your mic before you start talking.
Hello, does that work?
Awesome. You're on.
Okay, great. Our second reader is Brian Broom, who is, who is currently majoring in English and creative writing at Chatham University. His work has recently appeared in the childhood issue of Creative Nonfiction, but tonight he will actually read from a piece called 79, which he has developed for Creative Nonfiction's Writing Pittsburgh project. So please welcome Brian Broom.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, we good? We good? Okay. I just want to make sure because, all right, so I've written this piece called 79. It's a set of 7 stories about my neighborhood, which if you haven't been to the East Hills of Pittsburgh, it's kind of a shitty place. But they're based on the 7 deadly sins, so let's get into it. The very last 79 East Hills bus leaves Wilkinsburg Station at exactly 12:15 p.m. on weeknights, and I am usually the last one on it by the time it reaches Park Hill Drive where I live. Not many people walk my neighborhood after dark. It is usually me, having just gotten off a late shift at work, and the irritated bus driver sitting in silence underneath that flickering fluorescent light that sucks up any real light, blanching everything until it's an odd shade of greenish blue. The street is dark apart from the headlights on the bus, and the ramshackle houses are set a bit back from the road where the trees overhang. It would be charming were it not so ugly. The houses crammed up against each other, one another like brown teeth. Poor makes everything ugly. The both of us, the bus driver and I, are silently impatient to be back at our normally lit homes and can just about taste freedom. But tonight, our quiet time is interrupted by a rumbling in the distance, a communal shouting that grows louder and louder as the bus creeps slowly up Park Hill Drive. And when the noise reaches a fever pitch, we are set upon by a horde of drunken children who come out of nowhere like native warriors shrieking out battle cries, illuminated only by public chariot headlights, shouting and banging at the sides of the bus, seemingly in an attempt with all their energy to rock it off its wheels and overturn it, and me and one terrified white man inside. He leans on the horn, but that does not seem to deter them. And as with most miscreants, it only serves to incite them and fuel the attack to a fever pitch. I can smell liquor through the bus walls and the scent of marijuana, far more pungent than the usual dusting of it that always hangs in the air around these parts. I briefly wonder where their parents are, as if that would do anything to stem the tide of this ocean of howling, black, bloodthirsty faces bent on wreaking havoc. This insanity. I can only assume my death is imminent. The driver is now frantically fumbling for his radio as it crackles and sputters with the sounds of truncated words as he tries to explain what's happening to some incredulous and disembodied voice. And then, as quickly as it started, it's over. The whoops and the hollers that preceded the attack fade off into the distance. The excitement could not have lasted more than a minute or so, but it felt like an eternity, and he and I quietly creep up the road where the bus heaves a sigh of relief and spits me out. We are both as silent as we started out. He just pulls away noisily, leaving me alone under a street lamp until I can hear crickets. Welcome to the East Hills neighborhood of Pittsburgh, where we proudly display the 7 deadly sins. That's the first story. Thank you. Of all my favorite sins, sloth is the one I love the most. So I'm going to read a little story about sloth. Through sloth, the roof sinks in, and through indolence, the house leaks. Ecclesiastes 10:18. My doorbell is ringing at 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning, and before I even open my eyes, I already know who it is. He will keep ringing it until I get up to answer. So it's best to just get it over with right now. My vision is blurry, and my body is heavy with sleepiness. I throw on an old bathrobe and lumber down the stairs, holding onto the railing for dear life before I close one eye to look through the peephole. Face distorted through the tiny funhouse mirror glass, and eyes popped out and run through with red spider webs. Thin and tall and swallowed up in old dirty clothes. He is sorry. And I can feel the shame through the door before I even open it. And when I do, a cold blast of stale, sickly sweet liquor smell almost knocks me over, carried by the chilly morning wind. He says, I'm so sorry, sir. As we stand there, and I close my dirty bathrobe around my neck, I know that these are the words he'll lead with. Jody has never called me anything but sir, even though he's easily a decade older than me. His eyes are wet, either with the cold or with the sting of being hungover. He is sorry, but he doesn't remember fully what happened last night. Only the flashing of police lights in the wee hours, and that men in blue uniforms came to his house. As we stand there, both shivering, I take the opportunity to refresh his memory of the previous evening. Jody, next door neighbor, an indolent drunk. I spent most of last evening on my knees, Jody, in my bed, banging on the wall that separates our bedrooms. The walls around here are rice paper, and whatever your neighbor does on his side may as well be done right in front of you. But even if they were constructed from kryptonite, you could still hear Jody's insanity clear as a cannon shot. Like me, Jody is a drunk, but a far less responsible one. I work for a living, but Jody cannot be bothered to take up such intrusions. The bottle requires all of his time, and I take the opportunity to not invite him in, allow him to shiver on my doorstep, and recount every detail of his antics since I've been unfortunate enough to come to this place. He braces for the onslaught, head bowed, unable to meet my seething gaze. I am furious with lack of sleep, and we've both been here before. Last night, Jody, you began your screaming through the walls at ghosts. And as you stand here in the clothes that you've been wearing for a week, I need you to once again fill your memory as you cover for your face in feigned remorse. You're like every other no good, do nothing drunk in this neighborhood. And underneath it all, I can tell that you are perfectly healthy, able-bodied. I tell him proudly that I was the one who called the police. And he whimpers with shame, and his voice cracks out yet another, I'm so sorry, sir. The fact of the matter is that no one wants to visit you, and you have no family, because you cannot be bothered to get your fucking act together, Jody. Your life is one long, comfortable nap on the couch while your surroundings fall to pieces around you. I've seen you day in and day out, sitting and staring into space in the driver's seat of that stationary junk heap you call a car all day long, getting drunk, and then I have to deal with the fallout. You shout at invisible phantoms all night long, Jody, and last night you took the show on the road. Out to our shared courtyard, screaming for all you're worth and punching at the air. Your awkward and drunken jujitsu was on full display for a private audience of me at 3 o'clock in the morning, Jody. I watched you through the window, performing your clumsy kicks into the stratosphere, fighting and shouting at an invisible attacker and falling over backward. Your pathetic attempt to recover, leaving you rolling around on your back like an overturned turtle. It's the most movement I've seen out of you in a while, Jody. So I called the police. They came again to laugh at you openly and try to coax you back into the house, stumbling for it to start up all over again 20 minutes later. Sorry. I will call the police every time, even though no one around here seems to be willing to do the same for some reason, but I will call them every time, Jody, every night. He has not met my eyes. When he finally opens his mouth to speak again, I'm foolishly waiting to hear something new come from his lips. But as he stammers and in a voice as brittle as kindling, mumbles out yet another, I'm so sorry, sir. His breath cuts through the cold and causes vomit to hitch in my throat. I can tell that he's already thinking about his precious liquor to smooth over the rough edges of my harsh words. He embodies the work ethic around here. He inebriates himself to the point of dementia and thinks that the world owes him something. It is he who screams through the walls every night. I'm sure that he is fighting the world. Through sickeningly sweet liquor breath and a hung head, Jody tells me that he'll never do it again and turns slowly to walk, not to his house, but to his car through the snow. I tell him that he might want to look into getting a job. He walks to that weird purple vehicle and gets inside, and he'll sit in lethargy there all day, trying to change reality by looking at it through the bottom of the bottle. I have to work in a few hours, so I march back upstairs triumphant to try to get some much-deserved sleep, and I will fail. Because as Jody and I both know, there is no rest for the weary. Thank you.
Hello. This evening has just been amazing, so I'm so happy that we still have a couple readers to go. And we are really happy to introduce you to Stephanie Anderson. Stephanie teaches at Reading Area Community College, and Hippocampus published an excerpt of her in-progress memoir, an essay called Still, this past June. The memoir details her journey toward healing after giving up her daughter for adoption. Anderson was twice listed as notable in Best American Essays. In addition to Hippocampus, her work can be found in Brainchild Magazine, Stoneboat Literary Journal, and the Washington Post. And we're so happy she's here with us tonight. Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you to everybody who's listening tonight, including my beautiful daughter, Ellie. This essay is titled Still. At midnight, I sat, 13 years old, curled into a ball inside the front door, waiting for the sound of Dad's car in the driveway. I hated being alone with the house's silence. All that had once clattered, cluttered, sprawled, prettied, had now disappeared. The potpourri, candles, music boxes, ornate table lamps, and curtains. The house seemed to die with Mom. Dad stripped the wallpaper from the walls and painted them white, took down the family pictures and replaced them with Escher and Dolly prints. Mom's absence was made stark after he purged the house of her. Nothing was left for the corners to absorb sound. Dad himself, managing his grief in his own way, stayed away much of the time, engrossed in his work and occasional romantic relationships. When he did come home, Mom's grandmother clock would stand silently in the dining room, unmoving, and he would sigh as he opened it and restarted it, reincarnating its sound so that for an hour or a couple days, it would again echo hauntingly against our cold, hard floors. Sometimes, tiptoeing through the dining room, I would notice its silence suddenly, and it would overwhelm the volume of my memory. I curled in a ball over the floor vent in the corner and cried, waiting for the hum of the heater, for anything at all. 3 years later, in June of 1996, when I was 16, I shut myself in my bedroom, away from the quiet of the house, to study for a history final with Malik, the Pakistani boy with whom I fell in love that year. We left our notebooks sprawled out on top of one another on the floor, and I lay next to him on my little white brass daybed and studied his arm, ran my finger from his elbow to his wrist. He smelled spicy and sweet, a strange mixture of curry and Tide. "It's so quiet in your house," he whispered. I nodded, filled the spaces between my fingers with his. He kissed me, and we made noisy love. Together, we created a heartbeat I would hear over an ultrasound microphone 9 weeks later. Like bounding feet were a fast and furious clock. The 150 beats per minute surprised and exhilarated me. I watched the pulse on the screen, longing to stay where I could hear it. That night, I went to bed in the quiet of the house on Carhart, my hand on my abdomen, imagining feet had returned to the house. 7 months later, when my stomach had grown round and wide, my father, desperate to save me from adolescent motherhood, met with Malik's parents in their living room. Stephanie wants to go to college, he said, his forearms resting on his knees, his thick brown beard moving with his mouth, his eyelids heavy over his blue eyes. We sat together on Malik's family's couch. His parents, who had just discovered Malik had a pregnant American girlfriend, sat on the love seat across from us, gripped each other's hands, nodded nervously. Above them on the walls hung family photos in which the edges of individuals faded into one another. They sat so closely to one another that from where I sat, I couldn't tell where one set of shoulders stopped and the next set began. Behind the hung photographs was a papered wall, and in Malik's kitchen, water boiled on the stove. The house smelled of sweet earthiness. Cardamom and coriander drifted in soft waves through the room as we spoke. Malik's parents had wanted something different than this for their only son. A good education, a Muslim wife, a successful career, but now none of that seemed to matter. The sharpness of his father's face had softened into something round and desperate. One lone tear slid down his mother's face. Malik, tugging at his wind pants and pushing at his high-top Nikes against the wood floor, sat on the other side of my father. I wanted to reach for him, grab his hand, find his eyes, but I did not have the courage. "Well, Steve," said Malik's father gruffly, with a thick accent, "Noor and I would like to invite Stephanie to live here with us. We have an apartment over the garage. We'd help them." His mother lifted the back of her hand to her mouth and cleared her throat. "I could teach you about Islam," she said softly. Dad nodded, turned to Malik, then back to me. "Is that what you want? A new religion? A baby? A family? Now? Like this?" I wanted a family. Someone to love and someone to love me. I wanted the sounds and smell of life. Yes, I thought. It was exactly what I wanted. But not what I got. An hour later, Malik and I sat in my Ford Festiva. While parked atop Reynolds Road behind our high school, he shook his head. He told me we couldn't do it. Cicadas called to each other from under the rocks outside the car, and I tried to call to Malik. I wanted to tell him I could, I would. Courage faltered, and my maternal promise, simultaneously a prayer to him, stuck in my throat. The adoption was planned. Arrangements were made. Still, I did not want to let go. "Don't take her from me. Please don't take my baby," I cried in the delivery room when my daughter descended from me, approaching the place where I stopped and the world began. But my words, meant for my father, the doctor, the nurses, perhaps myself, were too tentative, too quiet, too desperate, a breathless appeal we all ignored. I did not see the baby carried out of the room because my father kept his hand over my eyes, and I did not push it off in time. But I heard her gurgle as she was carried past the automatic doors out of the hallway that opened and opened, then finally closed, leaving nothing but the shifting of uncomfortable bodies and breaths between tears. For a few seconds, I could not tell if I was crying. It was as if I struggled for a few seconds to know what place in the room was now mine to occupy. But some of the tears were mine. They were hot and fast. 2 days later, I left the hospital with my father, went home to my bed and crawled under the covers, encasing myself, wanting to slip away from the cold emptiness that my body and the world had suddenly become. It took me days to stand back up, and when I did, I went looking for the noise of life, but always the baby remained somewhere deep in the quiet of my mind. I could not imagine her separate from me, growing or becoming. She had remained to me some buried part of myself, a soft flutter in my womb. But 10 years later, I could not deny that she existed entirely separately from me when she told her adoptive parents she needed to meet me. They called to ask if I minded, if I wanted to meet her. By then, I had finished college, found a job teaching at a college. We want her to know you, her parents told me, and so I came. Followed her on the 2 small bikes she loaned me to the shore of the Susquehanna, where she dropped her bike and stood. Ellie, the little girl into which my baby had irrevocably transformed with another mother and father. She spun in a circle, there between the water and the grass, where a lean willow's roots pushed up out of the earth, reaching for the current while clinging to the steep slope of shore. This is my favorite place, she told me. It was where she went to think, to play, to wade into the river that changed in the current, that pushed against her as she clung tightly to the willow. Thank you for bringing me here, I told her. I was a stranger to her, but a woman in whom she recognized herself. And as I listened to the rhythm of the river and the timbre of her laugh, I knew that neither were mine. And then, in my car, in early spring of her 17th year, when her once loving and stable adoptive home was beginning to crumble, when a thick and silent rift had grown between her and her mother, she first called me Mom. The spring sky was blazing, and somewhere in the last stretch of our drive, a big old brick building appeared out of nowhere on the edge of the country road, and perhaps because of the big, gaping hole in its center, I pulled over. We were both captivated. Maybe that's when she said it. Mom, look. Or, Mom, wow. The exact context escapes me. I had only been Mom by text, but never aloud. Never as if she'd been saying it for years, as if I had never left her, as if there was not a gaping hole in our center. I did not feel like her mother, but I wanted to. Together we climbed out of the car and peered through windows and doors. It was, we discovered, an old roller skating rink, way out here in the middle of nowhere where such a thing didn't belong. A big 18-wheeler hit it years ago, said an old man who drove up in his tractor, took his bald cap off and fanned himself. Ain't nobody ever thought to fix that hole or tear the whole thing down, so it's just sat there like this. But they're gonna tear it down soon. Can I help you ladies? Oh, no, I said. Ellie shook her head sadly. I wish they wouldn't tear it down, I said. The old man raised a brow and shrugged. And the 3 of us looked up into the hole that was larger than us all. We stared into the space where children had once spun in circles on skates, and that was now overrun with weeds and saplings, the ceiling beginning to fall in coiled tendrils like streamers. Time had not stopped after the rink's destruction. There was no white walls. It was all so hopeless, even beautiful. I stepped closer to my daughter, afraid to take her hand, but willing to cast my shadow into hers. It was, maybe, a mother's shadow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie. A few shout outs from Twitter here real quick. Robin L. Flanagan says, I stopped breathing several times while listening about the dumpster. Intense reading in the hippocampus room. Where is it? Ellison Alcovendez, who is one of Under the Gumtree readers, says, home with a migraine, sad times, but hearing these true stories is making me feel better. That's so awesome. Laura Jean Kennedy, one of our readers from Hippocampus, says, poor makes everything ugly. That line hit me. And Kevin Bierman says, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. We are spread around the country, yet reading stories to each other live. Me too. Isn't technology kind of cool? Okay, so we're going to round out the evening with one last brief reading from Sarah Wells representing River Teeth. She's going to do some flash nonfiction from the Beautiful Things column that she edits with Michelle Webster Hine. Sarah, will you finish off the night for us?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This has been so amazing. I'm just so grateful for all of these stories and for Jana and for the Under the Gumtree organization of this. This has just been incredible. I'm going to read 4 flash nonfiction pieces from the Beautiful Things column. The first is Ripple by Megan Lasov-Gregg. On a rusted railroad bridge overlooking Ohio's Rocky River, I stand with my father beneath an ocean blue sky and listen to the water's murmur. My father removes his glasses and points to a large rock beside the lower bank. That's Big Rock, he says. I know Big Rock from a story he has told me, a strand of his story now interwoven with mine. I know my father, as a boy, stood on Big Rock, while neighborhood boys stood across from him on a narrow cliff ledge and hurled rocks at him. I know his glasses shattered in that fight and the price he paid at home for breaking them. I know how his father hurt him and how this violence swam into my life. I know I, too, had a father who wielded pain, and how we both survived to be here, to see Big Rock together. Silver-haired and limping, he leads me from the bridge, down a hill and across an overgrown trail redolent with honeysuckle, until we reach the dusty face of Big Rock. I press my hands onto the sun-warmed stone. As I touch Big Rock, I want to have an insight about forgiveness and healing, and the limits to both. But all I can do is lift my hands from the rock to touch my father's back, while ripples overtake the water and surround us in their strange and brilliant light. The next piece is called Lightening Up by Lori Granieri. My brother and I grab hold of dangling metal chains fastened to schoolyard swings in this expanse of crabgrass, red dirt, goalposts, and hard bleachers, where he'd slapped the face of the sky with baseballs all those years ago, where I'd ducked every flying thing, small-town insults, and countless foul tips. He's 35, I'm 27, here in our hometown, deflated tire factory stuck like a rusty knife through the heart of Main Street, old man bars slumped on every corner. Tonight, we're too old for this swing set. No amount of darkness will hide it. Too old and too heavy, him especially, with a pair of tree trunk legs and a sloping belly. If he were so inclined, each night Mike could fold his hands atop his chest and sleep like a satisfied banker. But we sink our asses onto the swings anyway. Hope and defiance loiter beneath the stars. We'll take our chances, because have you ever felt your own body fling itself into grace? And remember when your car hit a dip in the road, made the descent, and for a few moments you could swear your stomach was lagging behind, weightless at the crest? That's us, with roller coaster stomachs, toes reaching to touch treetops rising above basketball rims and broken asphalt. That's us, a 450-pound package, forward, back, trusting these chains to hold our bones, to lend us 6 buoyant minutes in a world bent on yanking every single thing back down to earth. Next, I'll read Bare Naked by Andrea Fisk Roderman. Rain falls, dimpling puddles. I kick off my clogs. My toenails shine like sparkling pumpkin peel. I slide my underwear and jeans down my legs, unsnap my bra, pull my sweatshirt over my head, lay my folded clothes on my shoes. I cross my arms over my silicone implants, icy to the touch in the November chill. Isis, the photographer, is making portraits of 800 mastectomy survivors, the same number of breast cancer diagnoses in the United States each day. Her vision of beauty is inspired by ancient Greek sculptures, pitted by weather and wind, missing a nose or an arm. She hands me a filmy gray scarf with silver sparkles. She directs me. Drape and tuck the scarf around your waist. Breathe from the bottom of your lungs. The shutter opens, closes. Sunlight and mirrors capture me. Behind me, walls of a tennis court weep water. Jules, her assistant, encourages. Hold that. Good. Look up. No birds sing. None. A few black birds sail between trees. I rise on my toes, arch my back, stretch towards tumbling slate clouds. Fantastic. You look like you want to bust out of there. How do you feel about taking the scarf off? Why not? What else do I have to lose? In truth, many treasures. But these scars are mine. I own them. I loosen the scarf from my waist, let it drop to my feet. I glide into a plie, raise my arms in a graceful arc over my head. And this last piece was selected as a reprint for the Pushcart Prize Anthology number 41. It's Resting Place by Kate Levin. When we arrive at daycare, I step out of the car and close my door gently, hoping not to startle my son awake. As I open the back door to retrieve him from his car seat, I see the bird. I gasp, but only its stillness is gruesome. Otherwise, it's perfect. Round, brown, downy, wedged between leather and metal, tucked into the space where the door opens and closes. A baby, a sparrow, I think. When I was young, we had a Christmas ornament just like it. There is my sleeping son, and there is the dead bird. When he was younger, just born, fear overtook me in waves. I could lose him at any time. I could lose him because I had him, and anything I had, I could lose. The logic was airtight, suffocating. But then I would look at him, breath, muscle, bones, humming in motion, a system insisting on itself. Who was I to doubt it? A clean napkin is the best I can do for a shroud. I pluck the sparrow from the back seat, amazed by its lightness and lack of resistance. A few feet away, a thick wall of green shrubbery separates us from the daycare's yard. No one is watching. I reach in and give the bird to the branches. Through the windshield, I can see my son, eyes still closed. Beneath a buckled harness, his chest rises and falls, rises and falls, rises and falls. Thank you so much. This has been so much fun. I'll turn it back over to you.
Sarah, and thank you so much for joining us, Sarah, and representing River Teeth this evening. It was such a pleasure to have you. And one final shout out to Creative Nonfiction, Hattie and Lauren. Thank you so much for joining us. And Donna and Hippocampus and your audience there in Lancaster. Thank you so much. Awesome. And thank you, Sacramento audience. And thank you, virtual audience. This has been the National Nonfiction Simulcast. Thank you so much and good night.